Welcome back to another chess game analysis video. Today we're going to take a look at a game between Magnus Carlsen and Nikolai Chadeyev. So this game features a very nice opening that was suggested by FireRage under the previous YouTube video. Thanks again FireRage for bringing a nice suggestion. He suggested a Falkbeer Countergambit, which arises in this game after e4, e5, f4, the King's Gambit, and now you don't accept the gambit, but you play d5, striking in the center yourself, which is an interesting way to treat the King's Gambit. Normally King's Gambit players are probably not so familiar with this, so you can probably try this in one of your own games. So in this game, we have e takes d5, we have e takes f4. So now basically the pawn structure is a little bit weird. Both players have captured one pawn and have kind of ruined their pawn structure a little bit, but we see development, knight f3, knight f6, c4 trying to hang on to the pawn, c6 trying to further destroy the pawn structure, we have d4, c takes d5, and now not taking back the pawn, but advancing c5, gaining space on the queen side. We have development, knight c6, bishop e5, which is not is a little bit of an inaccuracy. The engine already gives minus 1.2. So the problem after bishop b5 is you got as black queen e7 check, and you need to block this check, queen e2, queen takes e2, bishop takes e2, and now development, bishop g4. And now you see the d-pawn is kind of weak, only defended by the knight. And also black has got 3 pieces in the game and white only has got 2 pieces. So black has a lead in development and an extra pawn, which gives him a significant advantage here. But in the game, black didn't see this opportunity, but developed with bishop e7, which is also not a great move because you missed the tactic, but it's now an equal position, both players castle kingside, and now we have bishop takes f4, white gains back his sacrificed pawn, we have bishop g4 development, knight c3 development, knight e4, knight very nicely placed in the center of the board. We have queen d3 trying to overload the nicely placed knight. Bishop f4, now aligning the bishop with the queen, which can get some nasty discoveries maybe. So the queen needs to move to e3. Bishop f6, improving the bishop, also making the e-file open for a rook that can go there. Now, this is always a little bit hard to defend. So only the queen and this knight basically guard this backwards d-pawn. So in this game, white decided to give up his light square bishop for the knight. B takes c6, and now the knight can come in here and attack this very weak c6 pawn. And now black is the one who needs to give up the bishop pair. This time the dark square bishop, bishop takes, and bishop takes. So now both players have got this weak backwards pawn, but it's at this point quite hard to actually attack this pawn for both sides because a lot has already been exchanged. So bishop g6, improving the bishop. Now we have a trade, knight takes and bishop takes. Black, according to the engine, is very slightly better here, but it's not a lot because 3 minor pieces have already been exchanged. Maybe you can exchange queens and hold a draw. I guess both players in this position can kind of force a draw if they wish to. So we have queen g3 now, threatening checkmate. This has to be defended with f6. We have bishop d6, attacking the rook, rook e8. That's why the e-file has also been opened. Now the rook has a very nice site here. b4 now trying to expand on the queen side, and we're going to see what Carlsen's plan is. You see, this is a majority here, 3 against 2 pawns. So this is you already see that a passed pawn can be created if you push your pawns on the queen side. And we're going to see how the world champion does that. Bishop g6, now removing the bishop from the center. We have a4, now pushing the pawns. Very instructive, I think. a6, trying to prevent b5, at least temporarily. Now h4, we have queen d7, finally developing the queen. h5, kicking the bishop and distracting the bishop. It is a temporarily a pawn sacrifice, but you sacrifice this h pawn. But now the G pawn is pinned, so you can take with the rook on f6. And now basically the H pawn has been traded for the F pawn, and the rooks have a nice open F file where they can enter. We're going to see that this is going to be important in a few moves. Queen G4 offering a queen trade, and the queen trade was accepted. Queen takes, bishop takes. Now the engine actually prefers white slightly, and we're going to see why in a second. First, kicking the bishop. Bishop needs to retreat. Rook A f1. And now you see why the opening of the f file was important, because this bishop very nicely covers this square, very nicely placed bishop. And it's an opposite color bishop endgame if you want. So the bishops can't attack each other, and this is a very nice outpost for white's bishop. Also the rooks have got very nice open f file, so the black rooks can't really challenge the white rooks. So white is definitely to be preferred here. With perfect engine defense, this is probably a draw, but we're going to see that this is very hard to do. H6 is played, bishop e5, now improving the bishop even further. Now the bishop looks onto this square. Whether or not you prefer it here or here, that's basically a question of taste, but we're going to see that this pawn is also quite weak. So now white tries to pile up on this pawn. Rook a7 trying to activate the rook and defend this pawn from the side. And now we have b5, sacrificing a pawn to create a passed c pawn. So we have takes, takes, and takes. So now the c pawn is a passed pawn, and it can be pushed with c6. Rook a8. Now black tries to defend this position quite passively. c7, pushing the pawn even further now on a dark square, so that this bishop can always protect the pawn. Very dangerous here, one square away from promotion. So rook ac8 would have been the best defense, to try to block the pawn and try to just wait, because you're still up a pawn with black. If you can block everything and trade off stuff, this might be a draw, but it's already pretty hard. The engine plus 1.3. It's not that clear whether or not this is a draw, but it would have been black's best defense. But instead, black played king h7, which now allows the rooks to infiltrate after rook b1, bishop e2, trying to defend the pawn, and now the rook infiltrates with rook f7, now piling up on this weak g7 pawn. The rook can defend, but the other rook is gonna come very, very soon and also attack this pawn with rook e7, bishop c4, now trying to hold on to this pawn. Also these pawns, and also block the c file so that the rook can't support his own pawn. But now king h2, activating the king, rook ae1, rook ae8, trying to trade off rooks. You don't trade off the very active nice rook on the 7th rank. Rook d7, rook a8. Black can't really do anything and has to wait in this position to see if white actually pushes through. Rook b2. Now the rook wants to come in here, but the bishop covers this square very nicely, so you have to kind of maneuver around and bring the rook over a dark square into the attack. Rook b2, rook a f8. Now you first g4, and black is basically in Zugzwang in this situation. It's very hard to find a good move. So now black cleared the f file and rook f2. Now white can bring his other rook into the attack. b4, trying to create something, but it's too late. Rook f7, now piling up on this very weak g7 pawn. With h5, not a lot can be done here. The engine already says forced mate in 22. Rook takes on g7, now rook takes and rook takes, and now it's a forced mate in 8. And if you can't checkmate the black king in this position, there's always this pawn. You can easily shift rook over and then just push. So in this position, after rook takes g7, black resigned the game, and I think this was a very nice and instructive win by white. Maybe I'm also going to show a game where black actually won with the Falkbeer Countergambit. Here he lost, not due to the opening was pretty alright, but due to an endgame technique that was pretty well done by Magnus Carlsen at this point, and he's also quite renowned for his very nice endgame practice. So we can learn a lot, I think. This was quite instructive for me. I hope you liked it too. You can definitely suggest other openings and even games that you like. You can also send me your own games if you want to have them analyzed. Check out my Twitch if you want to see live chess gameplay, and I hope to see you back soon. Bye.